once upon a time, long, long before you were born, in a land far, far away, there was a kingdom ruled by a king named Dasarata. And he wanted to have children, but he didn't have any. And so he did a big fire ceremony to bring children. And in the middle of the fire ceremony, Agni, the being of the fire, came out, and he gave Dasarata a cup of rice pudding, sweet thing. And he said, feed this to your wives and they'll have children. And so from that divine event, 4 boys were born: Ram, Lakshman, Shatrughna, and Bharat, right. There's one more or not? It's Lakshman and Shatrughna are the twins, huh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. The main one I'm gonna tell you about is Ram. I'm not gonna get too much into the details. I tend to, but I'm gonna try to stay out of the details, especially since I don't remember all of them clearly. So Ram, before Ram was born, his father had made a promise to one of his wives that whatever she wanted, she could have it. She could claim it later. She could wait till later to take the, to claim the boon. And so when Ram and all the brothers grew to be about the time that Dasarata was saying, okay, I'm going to retire and somebody else is going to be the king, he said, I want to make Ram the king. Ram was always he was the oldest, and he was all the other brothers looked up to him. But the one wife, Kaikeyi, who was the mother of Bharat, said, no, I'm going to take my boon now. And my boon is that Bharat is going to be the king and Ram has to go to the forest for 13 years. 11 years or 13 years. Can't remember. And Ram by this time was married to Sita. And Lakshman and Bharat and Shatrughna were all actually dismayed. Bharat wasn't there, actually. It wasn't him that wanted this, it was his mom that wanted it, and he wasn't even there. And by the time he got back, Ram had already gone to the forest. And Sita and Lakshman went with Ram because they couldn't bear to be away from him. And Dasarata died of a broken heart. So this is the kind of intensity of his sadness. And yet, Ram and Dasarata both, well, Dasarata not so much. Ram said, I'm going, this is dharma, this is the right thing. I can't break the rule of good, the rule of rightness. So they went to the forest, and Sita was, so dedicated to Ram. Ram himself and everybody else said, Sita, you should stay back. You don't need to come. But she went. And so they went, the 3 of them, Ram, Lakshman, and Sita, went to the forest. And at some point, the demons in the forest were drawn to Ram. There was a lot of holy people in the forest trying to do rituals to sustain the universe, trying to do their pujas and their homas and their Vedic ceremonies to keep the universe functioning. And there were some demonic beings in the forest who were always stopping that, throwing burned flesh on the fires and trying to distract the priests or the yogis from doing what they were trying to do. And so part of Ram going was help, and all those demons and evil forces were drawn to Ram, and he would destroy them. And in the process, he came across one particular demon named Shurpakana, who he ended up, Lakshman cut off her nose and cut off her ears and sent her running away. And she went back to her brother, whose name was Ravana. And Ravana was the most powerful demon in the universe. And he lived in an island called Lanka. And Shatrughna Shurpakana, told Ravana about Sita, this beautiful woman who she had seen. And Ravana had hundreds of wives and was, convinced of his own amazingness. And so he said, I'll just take her and she'll fall in love with me and she can be my wife. And so he, through a series of tricks, Ravana came and kidnapped Sita when Ram was away, chasing a deer. And so Ravana took Sita to Lanka, which is this island. Ram didn't know where she was. He was off chasing a deer with Lakshman. He came back and she's just gone. They have no idea where she was. And the whole story of the Ramayana is about this Ram searching for Sita and the adventures that he goes through searching for Sita and his broken heart and the pain that he lives through in this. And Sita, this whole time, is on this island trapped and guarded by demons. And she has no interest in Ravana, this 10-headed monster. And but he's convinced that he can convince her to love him, and so convinced that even though everybody tells him Ram is not just a human, Ram is a divine being, and he's going to come and destroy you and everything. And actually, Ravana had earned a boon that he could not be killed by any god, any deva, any divine being. It's in a lot of these stories, there's these boons where I can't be killed by this or this or this or this or this, and they leave out the one thing that is a human. The human could kill Ravana. But he's like a human. What humans? They're just so small. What could they do? So he's like, fine, yeah. When the boon was coming from Shiva, he said, fine, yeah, whatever. Humans can kill me, sure. So Ram had actually incarnated for this purpose. And Ravana's brothers and his advisors and everybody said, just let Sita go. This is crazy. You're going to be destroyed. But Ravana couldn't do it. He couldn't let her go. He was obsessed. And in the end, there was Ram came across the ocean to Lanka with an army of monkeys and bears. And there was a big fight. And in the end, Ravana was killed by Ram. The end.
You're not going to remember something about Hanuman?
Hanuman was one of the monkeys.
I know, but he's so special.
We're not talking about him yet.
Okay.
So I wanted to give you kind of a frame. That's the story frame. I left a lot out. The Ramayana is thousands, 100,000 verses, something like that. And there's dozens of versions of the Ramayana in different languages and that weave different folk tales together. And that's the nature. The Ramayana is an epic. It's very old. It's older than the Puranas, but it's the nature of the Puranas. It weaves together local folk traditions with the Vedic spirituality that we've been talking about, the Rig Veda and the Upanishads and this kind of spirituality. It's a weaving of all these local traditions with this larger spiritual movement, Vedic movement. And so you have hundreds of versions of the same sub-stories and reasons why Ram was at this place at this time fighting this person, what the backstory is for Hanuman and what the backstory is for Shatrughna and the backstory for Shurpakana and Ravana himself, why he was a demon and it's just endless stories, different versions. And this is the nature of the Puranas. It's like collections of these, and all these things were oral. They were passed down orally before they were written down ever.
Are they all so patriarchal?
No.
There's some of them.
Some of them. The Devi Mahatmya, which I'll also talk about, is not, well, there's some patriarchal elements, but not necessarily. The heroine in the Devi Mahatmya is Devi, the goddess, who's the mother of all. But in this story, there's significant patriarchal elements. It reflects a patriarchal society for sure. And yet, one of the interpretations of the entire Ramayana is that it was all about Sita the whole time. She was sent, that Ravana in a past life had abused her, and she was reborn as Sita to just dispatch him, to take care of him, to bring the karma to him. Yeah. But there's a few things I want to highlight about the story. And one, well, they all have to do with light. All these stories, the Puranas and the epics, Mahabharata and the Ramayana are the main epics in the yoga tradition, and the Puranas epics means it's a super long thing, like the Ramayana, it's a giant story, poem. The Puranas are shorter, but the Puranas are super long collections of smaller stories. And they all deal with light and darkness, which is what we talked about, not last time, but the time before. Cosmic forces of light and darkness. They all deal with truth and untruth, what we could call good and evil, like the forces of, greed and destruction, and the forces of wholeness and healing. And in this story, we have those elements, and there's often in these myths a kind of concentration. You have one villain who really embodies this full embodiment of ego, full embodiment of greed and craving and self-destruction and everything. I'm willing to destroy everything and even die for the sake of having what I want, even if it's an illusion. This is Ravana. It's an illusion, it's a fantasy that Sita is ever going to love him. And yet he is willing to give up everything for that fantasy, for that illusion. And he watches his sons and his brothers and all of his generals and everybody die one by one by one. And it's all narrated in exquisite, excruciating detail. Gory, very gory, actually. And so and then there's Ram as the hero, who is the force of truth and order, and always looking out for the person who's suffering, and always taking care of the people who are kind of subjugated, and ultimately unmasking and revealing the truth, and also kind of as a catalyst revealing Ravana's nature to himself. And in the end, and this is especially characterized in some of the versions of the story, Ram is said to set Ravana free, liberate Ravana. So it's not like, he won, yay, I defeated you. It's this being of darkness who is entrapped in his own darkness is liberated by the light, set free. And from after that, because we're talking about lifetimes and lifetimes, so then Ravana goes on to be free subsequently after that. It's not like he's dead and that's the end. This is one example of thousands probably of different stories that have this kind of dynamic. The hero of the light, the being of contraction, greed, rage, etc., ego, selfishness, pit against each other. And there's certain dynamics that come up in these stories. One of them being that darkness is drawn to the light. The forces of the universe and the darkness itself wants to go into, it is attracted to that which is light, because that's its path to transformation. That's its path to liberation. And it might not know it consciously, but there's a draw there. And that darkness will masquerade as light, will say, I am truth, that is the falsehood. And I'll share more stories that kind of break out each of these things a little bit more. But I want to read a quote, and then I want to sing a little bit. So this is something that I came across this week from a book called Words of the Mother. So this is from the mother of the Sri Aurobindo ashram. When consciousness separated from its origin and became inconscient. So this is the framework that we've been talking about from the beginning, right? The consciousness, all consciousness, eternal knowingness separated from its origin and became inconscience. It plunged itself into the depth of inconscience. The origin, which is the divine that remains whole, conscious of its wholeness, the origin emanated love to reawaken consciousness from the depth of inconscience and bring it back into touch with its origin. So there's a statement here of the purpose of love. Love was created in order to draw consciousness, which is plunged into the depth of inconscience, back in touch with its origin. It may be said that at its origin, love is the supreme power of attraction, which awakens in response. So love is two things: the supreme power of attraction, and it awakens in response the irresistible need of absolute self-giving. These are the two poles of the urge toward complete union. The supreme power of attraction, which awakens the irresistible need of absolute self-giving. So it attracts and it awakens in us the need to give ourselves. And if you think about what love is like, it's like that. It's an attraction and it's a desire to give. No other movement could, better and more surely than this, throw a bridge across the abyss dug by the sense of separation that comes from the formation of the individual. Throw a bridge across the abyss dug by the sense of separation that comes from the formation of the individual. It was necessary to bring back to itself what had been projected into space without destroying the universe. So how does that which is projected out from the one into individuality come back without destroying the universe? So the individual needs to maintain its integrity and be drawn back towards its understanding that it is the one, but it's still an individual. This is the purpose of creation. This is the path of evolution. The one becomes many, the many experiences itself as individual, and the many is drawn back to the realization that it is the one without losing its integrity, without losing the integrity of the individual. That is why love sprang up. The irresistible power of union. That's the end of the quote. And obviously that whole thing, I don't know, obviously that was not all the quote. I was embellishing and explaining.
Can I just ask you, where was that quote from?
It's from a book called Words of the Mother.
Thank you.
What is that?
Words of the Mother.
What is it?
What is the book?
Yeah.
It's like a compilation of things the mother said.
What's from the mother?
The mother said it.
Okay.
Yeah. And the book is...
Who?
I don't know who wrote it down. People say Sri Aurobindo never stopped writing and the mother never stopped talking. So there's like 19 volumes of books of people who wrote down stuff that she said.
He wrote down.
He wrote down his own.
His own.
He's got 25 volumes of his own writing.
Oh, okay. And she's got 19 volumes.
And she's got 19 volumes, plus the agenda, which is a whole nother 18 volumes or something like that. And it's all stuff that she said.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
and other people wrote down. She didn't write as much. She wrote some things.
Yeah, thank you.
That's an amazing quote.
Yeah, it is really good.
And it's quite specific. She's trying to explain not only the framework of the universe, but what the point of love is.
Yeah.
Love specifically. It's this ingredient that you throw in and it has an effect. And we all know what that feels like on a life level. Oh, right, okay, I'm attracted and I want to give myself. And then all this other stuff gets mixed up in there. I want to give myself, but only if you will give me back something. That's not love. It's love mixed with something. I mean, it is love, but it's love mixed with something. So love itself doesn't have that quality of only if. There's no conditionality to love itself. The conditionality is added by us and our sense of individuality and separateness and what we feel like we need in order to survive. Krishna, his story is told in the Bhagavata Purana. And the last chapter of the Bhagavata Purana is about Krishna. And Krishna's embodiment, we often know about Krishna in the modern yoga world through the Bhagavad Gita, as the teacher of Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. But the Bhagavata Purana tells the story of Krishna's life. And all throughout Krishna's life, he embodied love in all the different manifestations. So he embodied love for his mother, and his mother loved him. So the love between a child and the mother, which in the Bhakti tradition is called Vatsalya Bhakti, the love of a mother cow for her calf. And he embodied the love of himself for his friends, and his friends for him. And he embodied the love of the gopis, the milkmaids, for him, and him for them. This romantic, youthful love. He embodied the love of there was a time when there was a big hurricane and he lifted up a mountain and everybody went and took shelter under it. And so, everybody loved him for that. The love of a collective for a leader. And the love of Arjuna for a teacher, for a guru. His life is love in all these different ways that it manifests. And as a being of love, he also attracted darkness. He attracted demons that would come and try to wipe him out. And so they would come to him. He didn't go looking for them. The same with Ram and the same with Durga. They don't go out trying to find demon hunting. They just be themselves, and the demons come to them. And ultimately, the demons are transformed and released from their limitation, their selfishness, their egoic experience, their self-isolated, separated, whatever's motivating them to be demonic is released and they're set free by Krishna's love. That's also another manifestation of his love. And I think it's easy to see the love of a mother for a child. It's harder to see the love of a Krishna for a Kamsa. Kamsa was his uncle, who basically tried to kill him constantly from before he was born until throughout his whole life. His uncle was told, his uncle was sitting with his uncle's sister, Krishna's mother, and he heard a voice that said, one of her children is going to kill you. And he was the leader of this area of Mathura. And so he said, I have to kill all your children. So he locked her in a prison and he killed all of her children one by one as they came. And then one time she had a baby and all the guards fell asleep and the prison doors opened. And the father of this child ran out of the prison and across a flooded river and brought the baby out into the village, gave it to a woman who was a farmer. And he took her baby and brought it back into the prison. So he switched them. And the baby that he brought in, Kamsa killed that baby. And as he killed the baby, she became the Divine Mother. The Divine Mother emerged from this baby and said, it's over for you, buddy. Sorry. And then Krishna was raised out in the fields. That's why he was a cow herd as a child, because of this switch. And his relationship with Kamsa was like that. We think of rivalry and we think of hatred, mutual hatred, but it wasn't like that. He loved his uncle, and in the end, he set his uncle free, and out of an act of love. And the same with Rama and Ravana. He set Ravana free. And the force of Ram, the force of Krishna, it's a force. It's like love in our individual lives. It's a force, it's a driving force, it's transformative, it's transformational. It changes the world. It changes the balance of light and darkness in space and time. Sitaram is the kind of joined energy of Sita and Ram as one force, one transformational force on the earth, Sitaram. And it's love. It's the force of love. It's not something else. And that's really the main, it's like, we talked about light and darkness and cosmic forces in a kind of, not necessarily abstract sense, but like that. But I wanted to kind of bring it down to earth a little bit. That this, what we're talking about here is love. That's the force.
Is love the force that holds us to Dharma?
Dharma is a big word that has lots of different interpretations. So dharma can mean your moral, ethical code. Dharma can mean your life purpose. Dharma can mean the different order of society, what each person should do. But if you're talking about the embodiment of the reason that your soul incarnated on earth, then yes, love holds you to that like a magnet. And anytime you walk away from it, love will draw you back to it. Anytime that you go in the other direction, love will attract you back inevitably to your dharma. And we have free will, so we can do whatever we want about that. But the force of love will. And the force of love also removes all the obstacles to dharma, to purpose, to embodying the reason why you came here. It takes them all away one by one through a process of healing, which is not always comfortable. Often is not comfortable. Because we come to identify ourselves, we had the chicken and egg conversation, we come to identify ourselves as all the stuff that we're not, and all the stuff that we need, and all the stuff that we want, and all our limitations. That's me. Don't take my limitations away. What will I wear? If I don't have any limitations, well, I can't go outside. I'll be naked. And we come to identify ourselves with all that stuff, and love will strip it away.
So, in a very down-to-earth kind of way. So, love would be able to love someone that you really don't love by seeing their unconsciousness.
Love doesn't not love is the problem with the problem with the math problem. There's an addition error. Love doesn't not love. It can. It can.
Well, you could phrase it that, like, you could say you're able to love someone that your mind is saying, I don't like this.
Yeah, that's on the human level. We have used the word love to describe something that is a mixture of a lot of different stuff. That has, a little bit of love, a little bit of greed, a little bit of lust, a little bit of hatred, a little bit of selfishness. Mix it all up, and we call it love. Yeah? And we say, I love you.
Yeah.
Here.
or the same for hate.
Yeah.
The exact same.
Right.
All the mixtures.
But the force of love itself is in there. It's part of the smoothie.
Right.
It is an ingredient.
Yeah.
In the smoothie.
Yeah,
but we've become very accustomed to the. I mean, if somebody offered you this
I would
smoothie,
drink it
you would
right
drink
up.
it.
I'd drink it for years, knowing that I was drinking
It tastes
so
very
long.
good. It tastes. The flavor is.
So good.
I mean, it depends. Some people are better at making the recipe than others, but the thing is, like, on the human level, we are drawn to all these different things, but love is this fundamental force of attraction and the irresistible need for self-offering. So that's how it gets balanced out, because I can see in myself, like, okay, total self-offering. Can I just have this much left? You can have all of me except just this little piece that I want to hang on to. And that's how you can kind of see there's an attraction that's very real, and the need to give of myself. I want to give myself fully to you. And those beings who have incarnated as great teachers, you see, they give everything. They don't reserve anything for themselves. Yeah. That's the power of light. Is you see somebody who, I mean, even, Amma, she hugs people. I mean, you can think what you want about her and anything, but she hugs people for hours and hours and hours with no food, maybe a little sip of coconut
She doesn't
milk.
even get up and go to the bathroom.
She doesn't go to the
I mean,
bathroom.
she will sit there
She
for
doesn't stretch her
4 hours
legs.
straight.
She's like, people's face oils all over her shirt.
Right.
I mean, just that, she's just, and no, it's not possible that anybody would walk into that room and she would say, no, not them. No, everybody. That's the force of love.
Maybe if they had COVID.
No,
No.
Maybe what?
I don't know what she did during COVID.
She
Maybe
takes
she-
it.
Hopefully she took a.
I mean, yes,
She heals.
aside from COVID, historically, she has healed people from their sicknesses and taken things in that, taken things in that are terrible and been super sick for the love of, and not like, hey, you owe me one, buddy. You know?
5 years later, remember that?
Right,
day?
exactly. Like me, where I'm like, oh, come on. Where's my reward in all this? That's the force of love. And the end, the irresistible power of union. The irresistible power of union, that's seeded into the cosmos. And this is yoga, right? The irresistible power of yoga, you could say. It's irresistible. We resist it, but because we are evolving. Every one of you, every one of us is evolving right now. Yesterday, 10 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, you are evolving. That's the irresistible power of love that makes it so you have to be evolving. You can't not evolve. It's not possible. It's not how this thing is set up. You can resist, but it's irresistible. You can, like the kid that's like, somebody's trying to take them out the door and the limbs are going in every direction, like, I'm not going. We can say no, but inevitably we are drawn by the irresistible power of love. There was a time near the beginning of creation when the Devas and the Asuras were churning the ocean of milk. They had wrapped Ananta Shesha, the endless serpent, around a mountain, and like once around, and the serpent was there, and it was around the mountain, and they were pulling like tug of war, and it was churning. The mountain was like a butter, like how you churn butter. The mountain was turning in the ocean of milk. It's like churning. And all this stuff started coming up, all these amazing things. Lakshmi came, and the Kalpavriksha tree came, and all these things. And one of the things that came, what they were going for was the Amrit, the nectar of immortality. But before the Amrit came the Hala Hala poison, the poison that would destroy the entire universe. And it came, like they were, the kids are up to no good, they're trying to get the Amrit, and out comes this poison that's going to just destroy the whole universe. What do? And Shiva, without thinking, grabbed it and swallowed it. Gulp. And Parvati said, what did you do? The whole universe is in your stomach. So now it's all going to go down there. And so she held it there. And it collected there. And it turned his throat blue. So they call him Nilakanta, blue throat. And this is the Divine One in the infinite compassion. You think of this one, I don't know, if you hear stories about Shiva often, especially in the West, he's like, he's crazy. He also laid his dreadlocks down when the Ganga was pouring to the earth because she was going to destroy the earth. She was too powerful. She was flying through the cosmos. So he laid his dreadlocks down to protect the earth. And he drank the Hala Hala poison. And when Kali was going crazy, rampaging over everything and devouring everything, he laid down in front of her. And she jumped up on his chest and looked into his eyes and curled up in his lap. So this is the divine compassion, love that throws itself in front of the moving train, that drinks the Hala Hala poison, and Shiva is the agent of transformation, but it's always done with this sense of like nothing that he wouldn't do for himself. It's like he won't ever expect somebody else to drink the Hala Hala poison. He won't ever say, hey, can't you do it? He just does it. all the worst things in the universe. That's why he's all covered in ash. Parvati said one time, Shiva, why are you so ugly? And he said, because I take everything that nobody wants. I go to the cremation grounds. I go to the place where nobody wants to go. And I live there. And I live with the ash of dead people all over me. And I take everything that nobody else wants and I cover myself in it. The crime, the punishment for killing a Brahmin, which was the worst crime you could commit in the olden days, was that you had to live at the cremation grounds. So that's the most outcast you can be. So it's not just random that he does that. And you had to eat out of a bowl made out of somebody's head, a skull. So that's what he does. He takes all the things, the worst. So it's like, even the worst thing you could possibly do, the worst punishment you could possibly get, that's the divine is there in that.
Is there a quality of service, or like, there's a lot to that story, but this notion that, like for example, I'm called to work on behalf of people who are struggling immensely.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a resonance with that message somewhere in there.
Yeah.
I don't know if service is encapsulated within a deity, but like, can you speak a little bit to that?
So there's self-offering. Service is complicated because we can be serving all kinds of different things in all kinds of different formats and everything, but service too, like selfless service. The Gita, Krishna talks a lot about service and not looking for the fruits of your actions. Mm-hmm. Serving selflessly. What is nishkarma karma? Karma without any attachment to the fruits of the actions. Mm-hmm. Action that doesn't generate karma is basically what he calls it. Action that doesn't generate karma because there's no attachment, because it's just offered. And this is the absolute, irresistible need of absolute self-giving. This is what Shiva embodies. The hala hala poison comes, he's just like, take me, pick me. I will give myself entirely, and there's no hesitation. So, to the degree, every one of these beings, and I know we talk about archetypes and symbols and all that stuff, and I think that's valuable, but I actually experience these beings as beings who embody these archetypes and symbols and give us something to kind of resonate with. And so, we can look to Shiva in that sense of like, I'm willing to go there into that space with those people who've been cast out by society. I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to offer myself because those are people and they don't deserve to be cast out. Mm-hmm. There's an impulse that motivates one to do that is holy. And so service, as a word has all these kind of connotations, but that's something different. That's commitment to everyone being included in the human family. It's service to that. Service to that. I was gonna. I think we're gonna wrap up, but I was gonna ask you guys to talk about something, but instead I'm gonna give it to you as your homework. So you can do this while you're driving home, or you can do it.
Well, they have 2 Saturdays off.
Oh, right, you got plenty of time.
For 3 weeks.
Yeah, talk to somebody, pick somebody to talk to about myths and legends that you grew up with. So it could be religious, it could be Lord of the Rings, it could be Star Wars, it could be Winnie the Pooh, it could be whatever. Just things from your childhood, myths. And how did they deal with this? Light and darkness, truth and falsehood, love and unlove. How did the myths?
I'd really like to make that for real a homework because 3 weeks is a long time not to come together,
Mm-hmm.
So let's.
So what's the home? I was saying like just talk to somebody and that's it. But do you want a product?
Spend some time sitting with it because it's a good way to see this theme of light and darkness at play in society, and then what you know, and even in movies, I mean, I don't really watch movies, but you see it still, that's like at the essence of every single movie, right? Every single movie is the battle of light and darkness, and how maybe light wins. So like, how did you see it growing up? What stories were you told? How did it shape you? How did it affect you? And how do you see it at play now, in today, in your life? That's a good 3-week break assignment.
And
maybe reach out to each other. Maybe share on the Facebook page, or I don't know what we don't have a WhatsApp group, but whatever, you know, maybe
you can tell them they have to do that.
Yeah, you have to. You have to do it first with yourself.
And I thought love didn't insist.
Well, I didn't say
Well,
that.
you have the firm love for the mother, that's like,
If you want to graduate from the yoga teacher training,
no, I
You don't
I
have
really
to.
mean it sincerely though.
But if you
Make sure the people online are getting clear.
yeah, you guys can hear all this. You're gonna email them anyway.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
I'm gonna have a follow-up
Um,
email at some point.
Purana means old. Means that stuff that happened a long time ago. So just to get, we were talking about a lot of things, but one of the things we talked about was the Puranas. We talked about the Rig Veda, we've talked about the different Vedas, we've talked about the Upanishads, and today we talked about the epics and the Puranas. And Purana means old, and it's old stuff that happened a long time ago, passed down orally. All these stories, collections of myths and legends that were spread out throughout India and washed together and woven together over thousands of years. And it's a big part of the stories that you hear. Yoga poses are named after this stuff. You know, a lot of yoga pose names come from these stories, and a lot of mantras and stuff. A lot of in the yoga space, there's these stories. This is where a lot of them come from. Most of them, I would say.